Hi, and welcome to the learning video for ELA Grade 12 for Week 1, Lesson 3. My name is Seema, and I'll be walking you through the lesson today. This page is from your learning packet. So you can see here that today we'll be rereading the launch text, which is Home Away from Home. As we reread, we'll be exploring how the text is an exemplar of the informative text genre. So to help us out there, we'll also start by reviewing some of those characteristics of informative text before we think about how the launch text exemplifies some of those characteristics. Our materials today here are listed on the screen. Of course, we'll need the launch text itself. You'll need your Lesson 3 note catcher. You'll also need something to write with. And then if you do want to hear the audio version of the text, you'll need your smart device as well with the Bounce Pages app downloaded already. The learning target for today is for you to be able to describe the elements of effective informative text. To start us off in our lesson today, you will be reading about the characteristics of informative text. Those characteristics are found on the Lesson 3 note catcher, and you can see them on the table here. Things like providing a clear thesis statement, or making sure that, or the author including facts and evidence that are cited by some credible sources. Those are all hallmarks of informative text, and you can see some of the other characteristics listed in that table there. Once you read that table and you've learned a little bit more, or you've reminded yourself about what informative texts are, then you will reread Home Away from Home and annotate, make notes in the margins, or underline parts of the text that connect back to those characteristics that you just learned about. Before you get started, though, I will do a sample for you so you can see what this might look like. So as I was reading the characteristics of informative text, I noticed that one characteristic is that the author would use facts and evidence from a variety of reliable, accredited sources. And as I was reading the launch text, Home Away from Home, I noticed that there were some footnotes in the margin. And one that stood out to me was this statistic about the number of international immigrants worldwide in 2005. So I underlined that, and I also underlined the the footnote here. So the number two above the number two at the end of that sentence refers to the footnote, which is at the bottom of the page. So when I go to the bottom of the page, it's called a footnote because it's at the bottom. So I see that the number two here corresponds to the number two in the text there. And I see that this statistic was actually taken from the United Nations, from a report that they did in 2006. So I would count the United Nations as a reliable source, and I see that the author did credit the statistic there. So they didn't just write the statistic and not cite the source, because um, that wouldn't be a good thing to do in informative text, or in writing any text really. We always want to be able to cite our sources so our readers know where we're getting our information from. And so I underlined this thinking that it connected back to the characteristics of informative text, and that was a good example of what a text would include. And then just to remind myself why I made that underlining, I wrote in the margin there that I wrote here facts, credited source. So when I go back and I'm skimming through my notes, I see that that is why that particular section was underlined. So now it's your turn to go through the rest of the text after you've read the characteristics, and make some of the same annotations in your copy of the text. Once you do that, we'll move on to the think portion of the lesson. So now that you've reread and annotated the text, think about how Home Away from Home provides a writing model for an informative text. Remember that an informative text is a type of writing in which the author examines concepts through the careful selection, organization, and analysis of information. So think about why this text is a strong example of an informative text. Once you've thought about that, I'd like you to share your thinking with someone, with a family member, caregiver, or friend. So share with them why you think that Home Away from Home is an informative text based on the characteristics that you read about. Once you've done that, you will put your thoughts into writing. And your writing task for the day is to answer that same question in about 5 to 7 sentences on your note catcher using evidence from the text to support your answer. And then in closing, you will be sharing your writing with someone and then reading your book for 20 minutes. To preview what's coming up in Lesson 4, we will reread Home Away from Home for the last time um, tomorrow, and then you will also be looking at how the author used transitional words and phrases in the text. And then finally, you'll end by writing a little bit about how the text connects to one of the guiding questions from the unit. Thank you, and I will see you at the next lesson.